The rise of Idi Amin and the young Scottish doctor he befriends is the subject of The Last King of Scotland. And two big box store employees contend for the charms of a beautiful blonde in Employee of the Month.
The U.S. versus John Lennon charts the history of the Nixon regime's attempt to silence a vocal beetle. And The Departed is Martin Scorsese's remake of the Hong Kong squealer saga, Infernal Affairs.
All this plus a discussion of the films of Martin Scorsese on Cinema Scene. Hello, I'm Mort Marcus, film critic and former film instructor at Cabrillo College.
And I'm Richard Von Busak, film critic for Metro Newspapers. So I was glad to hear that the Western Alliance for Video Excellence has nominated Cinema Scene for an award. We're one of the semifinalists.
3 finalists.
For the whole Western States region.
For the Western States region, it's not only the coast, but it goes over to Arizona, places like that. Big honor, big honor. And just 3 finalists, and we're one of them. So I'm very happy about that. Good films are starting to come out.
Yeah, it's getting to be that more prestige season. I've seen Little Children, and I thought it was quite good. I would advise anybody going to see it going to see Little Children to have another look at Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert before they see it. What else have I seen that was good? So Flags of Our Fathers was not without merit. I like The Prestige as one of my top 10 films.
Right, and we'll be doing both of those next time.
Yeah, that's true.
So look forward to that as we go into what we call Academy Award season here. And let's begin the show.
Good enough. What constitutes an over-the-top Jack Nicholson performance? Since when has he acknowledged the concept of a top? Nicholson plays a Whitey Bulger-style Boston thugmaster in Martin Scorsese's The Departed. It's a chess game about a matched pair of moles, Leonardo DiCaprio and Matt Damon, who the cops and the criminals have placed into each other's organizations. Vera Farmiga, a gamin with large shocked eyes, plays the police shrink who gets caught between the two major players. But unless you count Alec Baldwin's rip-snorting acting as an FBI agent so avid for the game that he sweats through all of his shirts, the movie is all about Nicholson, rolling around in every deadly sin there is, taking his whores to the opera, and leaving us with a bloody smile of farewell.
Man, you are trouble.
You don't know the half of it. You better get organized, quick.
Hey, last time I checked, I tipped you off, and you're not in jail.
Getting the feeling we got a cop in my crew.
Sooner or later, he's gonna find out who I am, and he's gonna kill me.
I can get the rap. You just gotta let me do it my way.
If you don't, it won't be me who pays for it.
There is a leak from the inside. It's real, man. Smoke him out.
You're lying to me.
There are things you don't want to know about.
What are you waiting for, honestly? I mean, do you want him to chop me up and feed me to the poor? Is that what you guys want?
It really came out of this film with I think, just images of Jack Nicholson. Now, Nicholson was like the most important thing in the film. He had all the best lines. He had the most fun making this movie. Imitating a rat by fleering his teeth at the camera, going around sniffing as if he could smell an informer out in front of him. It's a very different film than the original, I think, and and a lot less serious. I think ultimately just, I think they decided to throw out the script or something like that and just like turn it over to the actors and let them horse around through the whole
It was
thing.
something like that. I think you and I both agree that it was very enjoyable.
Yeah, it was.
And it was just a delight to be in there for 2 hours and 30 minutes. And some of that crazy dialogue really worked. I thought, I know you don't necessarily agree with me, that the acting was marvelous. I thought Matt Damon was terrific.
Yeah, them I was less interested in. I mean, Matt Damon is just one of those, in every life a little rain must fall. There he is.
Yeah, I liked him. I thought DiCaprio was fine. I really think Mark Wahlberg is really starting to turn into a hell of an actor. He was very abrasive and really got to me, I know. But in the end, this film starts seriously. It ends with such bad taste and senselessness that the big last montage scene in a Coppola film that would have you absolutely breathless, the whole audience was laughing.
Well, yeah, I think that's all it is. It becomes a bloody comedy all the way through, and I think it's because nothing's really emotionally at stake, which is I think that's something they imported from the original film, where they actually kind of almost put name tags on the two different moles so you can tell them apart during the title credits of Infernal Affairs, the Hong Kong original.
Right.
Between that, the crisis of Matt Damon's soul played out in front of one of the worst backdrops of downtown Boston I've seen. I mean, it was pure projection of a quality that Hitchcock would have had to set up and applaud. It's basically it's the story of like a gangster that has a lot of fun and eventually gets shot, which is, I guess, is what they decided to do with it.
But you see, the thing is that it was serious in the beginning.
I think it was.
See, I mean,
I think it was supposed to be a serious study of good and evil and so forth.
Good and evil, the idea of betrayal and lies and the search for true identity, the idea of fathers and fathers as guides is throughout there. Martin Sheehan was the guide, for Costigan, and Jack Nicholson's the guide for Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
There are real holes. Sorry, Dillon. There are real holes in this plot. Like right off the bat, no one suspects Matt Dillon is a mole. But Matt Damon can't stop doing it. But he's been raised by Nicholson, who is under surveillance from everyone. So you wonder, what the heck are they doing?
Yeah.
But anyway, it becomes this huge Shakespearean, Baroque, operatic, overblown film.
I think the Shakespearean thing is right with Mark Wahlberg doing the Hotspur role, and then it's just as a comedy of errors. I mean, when you actually even try to sum up the plot, you start feeling like one of those people trying to explain what happens in Twelfth Night.
A comedy of errors, but it's supposed to be a tragedy of mirrors.
I know, exactly.
And it just doesn't work. I will, without ruining anything, I will just say there is a rat on the windowsill at the end of this film that is the worst piece of taste I have seen on film since I don't know when.
Well,
I mean,
John
this
Waters
is a major director.
Yeah, this is a rise and fall. John Waters put a rat in a plate at the beginning of Desperate Living, and so.
Right. Forrest Whitaker is Idi Amin, the brutal half-mad dictator of Uganda, in Kevin MacDonald's taut biopic, The Last King of Scotland. Based on Giles Fodor's 1999 novel, the film is half fiction and half real, as it follows the fortunes of a fictional young Scottish doctor, James McAvoy, come to Africa in the spirit of youthful rebellion and adventure. Through a series of circumstances, he befriends Amin just as the dictator rises to power. Not only does he learn that the world is more deadly than he imagined, but the viewer watches a charismatic, bon vivant Amin, after achieving total domination in Uganda, descend into murderous, Macbeth-like madness.
But in my heart, I am a simple man. I am you.
Have you any idea what's going on in this country? They're not even bothering to dig graves anymore. We're simply feeding them to the crocodiles.
Nicholas, tell me what is on your mind.
I have to go home now.
You cannot. You are like my own son.
I'm Nicholas Garrigan, and I'm from Scotland.
Your home is here.
Go home. Tell the world the truth about Amin. They will believe you. You are a white man. I need to get out of here.
You earn your passage first.
You want me to kill him?
You want to kill me?
I will not die. You have grossly offended your father.
Well, here we have another very strong possibility for an Academy Award nomination.
Sure.
And that is Forrest Whitaker as Idi Amin. Just charismatic, joyful, and terrifying all at the same time. He does a brilliant job.
He really does. He's so convincing you can almost believe the script. I think he's, the problem with Whitaker is there's very few parts large enough for him. But those who've watched him ever since his debut in Fast Times at Ridgemont High know that that there was moments, for example, in the Walter Hill movie Johnny Handsome, where he was holding his own with Morgan Freeman. He's a sensational actor, and it did my heart good to see him playing Idi Amin. It would have been a marvelous part for anybody, but Whitaker really takes it and runs with it.
You are right. He is. It's very difficult to cast him. Because what we forget out there is, no matter how good an actor is, it's the way he physically looks that is going to determine the role he's going to play.
That's true.
Forrest Whitaker cannot play Don Quixote.
That's where
and I'm not talking that because he's African American, but because his body is not a Don Quixote body.
But he's perfect to play Idi Amin.
Perfect for Idi.
Now, my problem with this story is that it becomes very much, I think, a standard Heart of Darkness thing, including these like heavily lap dissolved, using montages of like too much drugs and too much booze, and when our hero like starts to go native and gets into trouble, up into the final. The shot that every white filmmaker makes when they're making a movie about Africa, which is the planes gently, ascending as the planes fall back, beneath them and stuff like that. Almost as if the director is saying, like, we've got to get out of here now, So,
there are some problems with the plot, which people are talking about. But I got to tell you, I thought this was a real taut thriller, not just a biography picture of Amin, but a real taut thriller. And I thought. And you were going to disagree with me, that James McAvoy was marvelous and was a marvelous foil for Forrest Whitaker. I really thought he brought off the part.
Didn't believe him. I was just kept waiting for Amin's latest catastrophe and his latest outfit too, because he's such a clothes horse.
I thought it worked. I really, and I know that all the critics I saw this with really were on the edge of their seats, and they were very, very surprised that it was more than just an acting job.
Okay. Now, there's a rule in documentary filmmaking that every successful nonfiction film needs a hero and a villain. And the U.S. versus John Lennon makes it clear who's who in its title. The hero is musician and peace activist John Lennon, who lends his considerable talents to the anti-Vietnam War effort in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The villain is the justice-obstructing, paranoid Nixon presidency, which brands Lennon as a fellow traveler with serious revolutionaries, despite the fact that he has embraced only peaceful means of protest. When Nixon's men used the immigration and naturalization people as a weapon against Lennon, the musician was hampered in his efforts to preach for peace. Or so this version of the story goes. Sources here include everyone from Gore Vidal to G. Gordon Liddy.
Statement in all the newspapers that they're getting more better than Jesus himself.
Well, originally I was pointed out that fact in reference to England, that we meant more to kids than Jesus did, or religion at that time. I wasn't knocking it or putting it down, I was just saying it.
I think simply on the basis of statistics and fact, his statement is untrue. Well, no one is more popular than Jesus.
I just didn't mean what everybody thinks I meant, I'm not anti-Christ or anti-religion or anti-God,
So many people have built buildings in the name of Christ, and what have people done for the Beatles? What have they done for us?
We urge you to take your Beatle records, pictures, and souvenirs to the pickup points about to be named, and on the night of the Beatles' appearance in Memphis, August 19th, they will be destroyed in a huge public bonfire at a place to be named soon.
Nobody told me there'd be days like these.
What great music. And isn't it out of context in this? What can I say about this documentary? I was touched to see, as always, to see Lennon and Yoko Ono, who really comes off a lot better in film than she does in still photographs. Any resentment one might have for her having, fiendishly broken at the Beatles is like quite gone by the time you see this film and you see her in action.
Well, I got to argue with you. I don't think she broke up the Beatles.
I know.
Lennon was just going a different way. He was really growing in another way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you can see it. I think, I think there's a certain naivety in his approach, and it's strange to see them using his music and the power of seeing the man as an argument that he was like such an important enemy to the Nixon administration. instead of just one among many on that enemy's list. That said, it does have its inspiration. What did you think?
Well, my attitudes were very strange. Of course, I was in tears in this film.
Of course, me too.
This is a part of my history.
Yeah.
But I know more about this story, and I know what has been revealed from the secret files by the FBI now, and it is so ridiculous and appalling. It is so embarrassingly absurd what those documents really had in them.
This is not a new story, as we know. This has been around since '74.
And you could see that he really was frightened, and so is Yoko. And they really went through a lot of trauma over this. My attitude towards this film was twofold.
Yes.
One, how almost the White House is using the same script today that Nixon was using back then.
Well, what surprises that? Because there's so many ex-Nixonites in the present cabinet.
And everyone's falling for the same thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing was, look at all the people we could muster back then. Where are they now?
Yeah.
And it's very sad. I thought it was a wonderful documentary. I think everyone should see it. I think kids should see it and just really get a picture of what goes on behind the doors of power and just what John Lennon had to go through.
Okay, well, myself, I feel a little more pragmatic about it. I think just on the grounds that some of Lennon's protests only work if you are John Lennon. The rest of us can stay in bed and wait for peace for the rest of our lives, but we're going to have to go out and agitate a bit.
Yes.
So.
Have to assume responsibility.
Yeah.
You're right. When we return, we will discuss the films of Martin Scorsese.
In a dark time, when hope was bleak, there lived a young girl whose only escape was in a legend that wanted her back. The legend speaks of the lost soul of a princess from another world who will one day be reborn. There will be signs that mark her return. There will be secrets that reveal her destiny. There will be a journey that will make you believe. Imagination of Guillermo del Toro. In darkness, there can be light. In misery, there can be beauty. In death, there can be life. Labyrinth.
The films of Martin Scorsese, arguably now one of the most important directors in America, looked at by the rest of the world.
Yes.
I think that reputation really rests on his early films.
I agree with you to a point. I think that his early films are the ones that will persist. I think it is stuff like Taxi Driver and Mean Streets, often imitated, rarely surpassed, or Raging Bull for that matter.
Raging Bull, considered one of the great 10 films of the 20th century.
And when you watch something like The Passion of the Christ, it makes you appreciate The Last Temptation of Christ all the more.
Right.
I think that Scorsese, in the long run, it may be a question of whether it's his influence, the way that he's influenced directors as disparate as Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino, or whether it's his knowledge as an archivist that may prove to be the most important.
And his teacher.
And an archivist and as a teacher at NYU, yes. And I think the fact that he has such an encyclopedic knowledge of cinema, I think nobody could approach the man's
except
knowledge.
us. Except us.
Yeah, right. So we owe him for reviving the legacy of Michael Powell, and we also, but at the same time, we have to put up with the fact that there's so many people trying to imitate what he does and making it just look dreadful. So. Yeah. Let's talk about some of your favorites of his.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've named a lot of them.
Yeah.
Mean Streets was wonderful. His early films, he's got his what he calls his double, his alter ego,
right?
And that is Robert De Niro.
Yes.
He's also making his original films even before De Niro with Harvey Keitel. They form the duo that will be in these early films, and it's their most powerful acting. The energy in these things is marvelous, but all of his films, in the end, as much as I enjoy the dialogue, taking me back to New York, the New York of my youth.
Yes.
The films, I've always said, and you've heard me say this again and again, they're empty. They just don't seem to have any depth. They're entertainments in the end, for the goodness of the dialogue and the greatness of the acting.
Well, as he moves farther away from that atmosphere of violence that he soaked in when he was young, as he, soaked in from a distance, let's face it.
Right.
As he moves farther away from those roots, when he was like, a movie watcher by day and like a seminary student in training by night,
right.
It becomes more and more mannered, more and more an imitation of the works of Nicholas Ray, of Raoul Walsh, of everybody down the line. And I think he had I think the fact that when he went to Tibet, that kind of did it for him. That takes a lot of energy out of a lot of filmmakers and actors. So,
well, let me just say one thing in ending this.
Yeah.
What happens is with either Goodfellas or right after At the Age of Innocence, he gets big Hollywood money.
Yeah.
And all of his films, just think of them: Aviator, The Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
They all get to be these big, overblown epics.
With
even
these
The
juicy
Departed.
little morsels in them. Yeah.
And now Robert De Niro has been replaced in the last 3 films by Leonard DiCaprio.
Yeah.
And that tells the story as far as I'm concerned. Though I think DiCaprio is growing on me. I really do. Okay. Dane Cook is Zach. In his own words, a slacker drifting through his workday life in Greg Coolidge's comedy, Employee of the Month. Zach works in a Costco-like box store, roller skating around the cavernous space, visiting friends, and not doing much of anything else. He's a good guy, but not much else. His nemesis is Vince, Dak Shepard, an ambitious, conniving checkout clerk who has been Employee of the Month 17 straight times and is going for the store record of 18. All this changes when a new checker comes on the scene. She's beautiful, she's blonde, and for what it's worth, she's played by Jessica Simpson. To win her charms, Vince and Zach go head-to-head for the current Employee of the Month award. Guess what's going to happen?
I'm serious, you guys. I'm gonna win Employee of the Month.
Having fun? I hope you wore protection. Maybe you should listen to your loser buddies, okay? You ain't got a shot.
Okay, who's calling me a loser?
Easy there, Hubble telescope. No need to get physical.
No, I'm serious. I can't see who's calling me a loser.
Well, I'll give you a hint. He waxes his forearms and he lost his virginity in the Boy Scouts.
Uncle Donnie?
Perhaps you've forgotten. I have the fastest check stand in the Southwest region.
Southwest, man.
I'm going to obliterate the Employee of the Month record.
Obliterate it, boss.
You're a dink.
You will not stand in my way.
Bring it.
I'll bring it. Because game is on. And someone's going to get hurt. But the someone is not going to be me.
That means you, man.
I'm the boss, and I get the last word. Damn it.
Right, boss. I'm sorry.
Jorge, shut up.
Sorry.
Jorge?
Okay.
Well, Greg Coolidge, the director of this, hasn't done much work. He's very new, he's very young, he's really coming from being an actor. I've got to say, this was the most unfunny comedy I've ever seen. I mean, it was just nothing. It was absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I think nothing's the right word for it. It's ugly looking. It's shot entirely in the depths of a Costco.
Mm-hmm.
I really hate its message too. The idea that the way this erstwhile rebel can really rebel is by becoming a gold star employee, by like pushing himself to get up early in the morning and show up. I'm thinking like, what is this film's message? You know, that is like to today's teenagers. If you really want to rebel, the way to fight the system is to kiss it on the hand as just hard as you can. And so, with that in mind, with the fact that this pretty mediocre cast, they have Jessica Simpson in it. And the way they light her chest is a perfect example for young film students of the old Hollywood adage, put the light where the money is, you know.
And with that, we're going to go to a break and we'll be back with Video Corner. Well, Martin Scorsese's early films, we've been talking about them, really are marvelous. We've mentioned a lot of them. We did not mention The King of Comedy, which is one of those crazy films that I loved, which has De Niro as a psycho who wants to be an announcer on a talk show.
Right, and he wanted Johnny Carson in the part that Jerry Lewis eventually got. I think one of The Last Waltz is one that I go back to watch with a lot of tenderness. This beautiful Boris Kaufman photography and all that music and stuff.
Well, okay, and what we haven't discussed is, of course, he does some great documentaries and great rock concerts while he's doing all of these other films. But let's shoot to one of his 2 or 3 best now in his most creative period, and that is Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver. But what's happened here is this is not the raging De Niro. This is the earlier De Niro when he goes to court, Sybil Shepherd, on the pretext that he wants to become a volunteer for this political campaign she is the receptionist for. Let's shoot to it now.
Then what exactly do you want?
Would you like to come have some coffee and pie with me?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. I think you're a lonely person. I drive by this place a lot, and I see you here. I see a lot of people around you, and I see all these phones and all this stuff on your desk, and it means nothing. And then when I came inside and I met you, I saw in your eyes and I saw the way you carried yourself that you're not a happy person. And I think you need something. And if you want to call it a friend, you can call it a friend.
You're gonna be my friend?
Yeah. What do you say? It's a little hard standing here and asking you something.
Well, certainly what I would say is that you people out there, go and take a look at some of these sections in video stores for the films of Martin Scorsese and catch up on them. Anyway, let us go right to our votes for the week.
Okay, the new Scorsese, The Departed, are you going to recommend it?
Sure, it's just a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. It goes on too long, but it's fun.
Right.
Last King of Scotland.
I am definitely going to recommend it.
Yeah, same here. It's worth seeing. Forrest Whitaker in like the role of his life, pretty much.
Right, and it's going to be an Academy Award nomination, I'm sure. What about John Lennon?
I'm going to say wait till video for that one. Wait till DVD, rather.
Okay, and I'm going to say yes, it's very definitely worth seeing. And whether on video or whether in the theater, just doesn't make any difference. And finally, Employee of the Month.
Yeah, avoid like your life depended on it.
Like your life depended on it. Okay. Keep going to Costco, though. Yeah. Just avoid the film.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Mort Marcus.
Richard Von Busak here.
And this has been another Cinema Scene.